The following is brought to you by the Starfleet Podcast Network, SPN, The Spin. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm in troubleshooting mode, and it just clicks. It just comes right in.
Well, you did it. Whatever you did, you did it. You know what Scotty would say? You did a miracle with it.
Yes. I should have told you that it would take me 10 minutes to fix your camera issue and then get it done in 3.
Exactly. Oh, you didn't tell him that, did you?
You didn't tell him how long it would actually take, did you?
Red alert.
I am BigJ with Beyond Trek Podcast. I am here with Ray Tesi. Did I get the last name right? I want to make sure
You did.
Okay, good. Excellent.
It's been pronounced worse, and I've been called worse. So.
Yes, I know exactly how you feel. I've been called a lot of things, just not late for dinner, which I know that's a very.
You sound like you sound like me, but I got that from my grandmother. So.
That's an old one, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I think my grandmother used to tell that while she was riding on a dinosaur. I'm not sure.
You said while she was riding on a dinosaur?
Dinosaur, yeah.
So you are the owner and operator of Neutral Zone Studios.
That's correct.
And is that a picture you have there of it in your background? I saw some photos that you've got online.
Yeah. So the picture I had available to put in the background, this is a film shoot we did in February.
Okay.
So you've got, a couple of the actors up there on stage. You've got Vic Mignogna at least on my right, who is the director. We're actually getting ready to release this one in another week or two. Very cool. But that is a shot of the bridge as it exists at the studio.
So your studio looks like it gets used a lot, I'm sure, for different fan films, different productions.
So the studio, since its inception, which about 2010, maybe 12, this version of the studio, there have been, I always say that there have been more than 60, but that number may have even gone up since we took that number. The most well-known is a series called Star Trek Continues.
Star Trek Continues, yep.
Star Trek Continues, which that's Vic, who's in that picture. He was the executive producer. He played Captain Kirk. And his vision was to make the last 2 years of the 5-year mission. So, and it's really like Star Trek. I have to read.
It is. I've seen it. It's very good. It's very enjoyable to watch.
Yeah. And then we've had a number of other groups come through on a regular basis. The one that we're just about to release now will be our 6th or 7th episode, and ours are called Tales from the Neutral Zone. And we've had Avalon Universe and Dreadnought Dominion, lots of independents come through. So and it really started. I have to give them a little bit of props here because it started with a group called Starship Farragut.
Starship Farragut.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And that's one of the interesting things that I've seen in regards to recently expanding that Facebook group of friends and mutual acquaintances, meeting more people that are involved in Star Trek in different ways. And as I do that, I've started to see that there's a lot of crossover, a lot of meshing of things that you've done and productions that you've had in your studio and people that I've talked to really on both ends of that. So I think that's one of the things I want to ask you about is how tight-knit do you feel the Star Trek community is on social media in regards to this group? Do you find that you're seeing a lot of crossover between the people that are involved in your productions or using your studios?
So I'm not sure that crossover is the right word. So maybe as we're talking, I'll come up with the right word. Lots of the filmmakers do collaborate. Maybe collaboration is the right word.
Yeah.
But lots of these fan film locations are elsewhere. Some of them are in the Midwest. Some are on the West Coast. There's some in Germany. There's some in the UK. So we're trying to do more together, but we have formed what basically is a pretty tight-knit group of filmmakers. And we exchange ideas and information. We want it to be open, right? That whole concept of, IDIC with Star Trek, right?
Infinite diversity and infinite combinations.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we really want each other to succeed. It's not like I got a great film out there and, what have you done lately? Everybody's doing their thing. You end up doing this because it's a labor of love. I'll quote Vic on something. When he came up with Star Trek Continues, he said it was his love letter to Star Trek. I think we all share that passion. A lot of us, like I said, do work together. A lot of us, are just separated by space. But we've come up with ideas where people can film at their location. We can film at our location, and we'll mesh the two, and we'll make some hybrid episode. So those are things that are coming. So it's very much a collaboration amongst the filmmakers.
So in regards to your studio, can you tell me a little more? I think we talked about it briefly when we were arranging to meet up and talk, but just how you came into where you're at right now with this studio. And
Sure.
Tell me again where you're located so our audience knows that.
Yeah, sure. We're in Kingsland, Georgia, which is very southern Georgia. It's actually only about 25 minutes from Jacksonville, Florida airport. I cross the border and we're right there.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been a fan since September 1966.
Yep, when it first started.
Please don't add up the years. Please don't do
that. I won't. I'm not that good at math.
Okay. And so I've been following Star Trek for a long time. And somewhere in the maybe early 2000s, I came across a series called Star Trek Phase 2. I think it originally started as Star Trek New Voyages.
Right. Star Trek New Voyages changed the Star Trek Phase 2.
Right. And I looked at it and I said, wow, this is great. This is Star Trek. I haven't seen anything like this. And I wasn't really familiar with fan films at that time. I didn't even know there was such a thing. And, that kind of went its way. And I got into the fan film thing. And, some of them are okay. Some of them aren't. That's okay. People are having fun. That's
right.
Cool.
It's all about the fun.
And then in 2017, I'm not even sure how I got familiar with it, but I found this series called Star Trek Continues. And they had just released their first episode. And not only was it just like Star Trek, but it used Michael Forrest as a guest, who played the original Apollo in Who Mourns for Adonais, and he was playing Apollo now years later. And I got hooked. I said, this is great. And so I watched that episode, and I looked at the credits, and I saw that Vic was involved as the executive producer and creator and all of that. And I saw that he was going to be at a convention in Florida. I think it was actually Florida Superman. And I stalked his booth. And he came out, and there was nobody at his table at that. Just, kind of loose. So he came out, nobody was at his booth. And so I walked up to him, and we probably talked for more than 15 minutes before people started gathering. And I said, it's time to go.
Right.
And we talked about Continues and how I enjoyed it, Star Trek, and what have you. And He gave me his email address. I said, really? You're giving me your email address? He said, yeah, let's stay in touch. So over the years, I tried. I saw him at conventions, but, he sees thousands and thousands of people. He has no idea who I am, but, hey, Vic, good to see you, blah, blah, blah.
Right. We met here at this place, so-and-so back years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And in about 2015, there was another, although it no longer exists, there was another studio called Starbase Studios. And that was in Oklahoma City. And they had a 360 bridge. And I had never been on a Star Trek set in my life. And I got my buddy, who I've known since high school, and I said, we're going to look at this thing. And while we were waiting, we came up with a story. We said, this is a pretty good story. Why don't we talk to them about shooting? And we went to Oklahoma and we met with the guys who were the owners and we pitched our story and they said, great. And the following year we went back and we had cast it. And it's called Starship Republic. And it's something that I'm still very proud of. But that was my first foray into fan films. Well, about 2 years later, when I was still talking to these guys, when they were still around, I saw that Star Trek Continues had stopped filming in February of 17. And I found this out in about October. And I said, what? I'm going to write Vic a note. And all the note said was, or the email said was, what are you doing with the sets now that you're done? And I never expected to get an email back. And as they say, later that same day, I got a message back from Vic. And all it said was, what do you have in mind? And I came up with 4 ideas as a businessman. I've been a businessman a long time. And I pitched 4 ideas. And I said, by the way, Vic, here's my phone number if you ever want to get in touch with me. And later that same day, at my desk at work, the phone rang. And it's like, hey, is this Ray? Yeah. It's Vic. And I'm there going,
who? Vic who?
Yeah, no, not Vic who. I knew Vic who. And we probably spent 40 minutes on the phone talking Star Trek.
Yes.
Now, Star Trek Continues. We talked about conventions. We talked where we probably crossed each other at shows, just for like the love of Star Trek. And at the very end, he said, would you like to see the studio? And I went,
of course, duh.
Yeah. And I said, yeah. I said, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. So he said, okay, here's what you do. You got to get into Jacksonville, and then get a car. And it's only like, 20, 25 minutes. Now, I live in Boca Raton, Florida. So I took a flight from West Palm Beach because I had no idea where Jacksonville was.
Gotcha.
So I got it. I got a flight. Plane went up. Plane came down.
It was like the next city over.
What? Yeah. I got out to the studio, and Vic was outside waiting for me with like an entourage of people. And I was like, okay. I mean, I thought I was coming here to just,
right,
get through the studio. And we started walking through. And from the minute I walked in, I mean, something that we say to people all the time when, like, the doors open and you stare at the corridor, okay? It will make you feel like a kid again. And I was just, like, so enamored. I couldn't believe it. I felt like I wasn't even on set. I was on the ship. I mean, it's just that realistic to me. And to, lots and lots of people. And I started walking through and, a couple of guys, were talking to me a little bit. So I pulled Vic aside because I was up there. I knew that I was up there to possibly purchase the studio. And I said to Vic, do these people know why I'm here? And he said, everybody knows why you're here. We walked through. And we got to the bridge, and I'm telling you, I had no words. And when we were kind of done with the tour, I was standing, was still standing near the bridge, and he said, "So what do you think?" And I was like, just mouth open.
Yeah.
And I still, to this day, when I walk in there, it's like, wow, I can't believe this place is standing,
I can't imagine how nice it would be to see that and be there that first time.
It's crazy. I mean, we invite anybody we can to come and see it. So please come and see it. Please come and see it. And we'll give you the royal treatment. We'll treat you better than we treat most people.
Good. That sounds promising.
It sounds promising. And I took Vic back to the airport. He had a flight that evening, so I took him back to the airport. And by the time we got to the airport, he and I had reached an agreement. And in January of 2018, I purchased the studio. I spent almost 5 months trying to get in touch with CBS because I didn't want to do something, violate, their intellectual property. And they said, okay, if you want to do it, here's how you're going to do it.
Right.
And I said, okay. And I've been standing ever since.
Was this after the change in the fan film guidelines, or was it before that?
So the fan film guideline change came in 15 or 16.
Right.
This was 18.
Okay. They started loosening back up, it seems like, around then.
Well, no, it wasn't at all. It was very tight.
Why did I get the impression that at some point here, at least in the last few years,
correct.
It seemed like...
Correct. You're correct.
Okay.
It almost coincides. Don't quote me on this.
Okay.
It almost coincides with Paramount Plus.
Yes.
Right? Star Trek was languishing.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing new was coming out on Star Trek. Enterprise had been canceled, and some of the movies came out, next gen movies came out, but it was languishing.
Yep.
Now Paramount Plus has had all this, and they're really very good. Some of them, anyway.
There were definitely really some good fan films out there.
I think with the success of what they've got going now, I can't say they've turned a blind eye, because every once in a while somebody will hear something about what they've done, and that's okay. But back in 15 and 16, it was very tight, and the guidelines came out. And that's right when I was doing crowdfunding for that first film, Starship Republic. Mm-hmm. And I threw a fit like everybody else because I had this whole idea for a series. And, it was a 15, you could do 15 minutes, but you could do 2 15 minutes. And it was like one and out, change the characters, blah, blah, blah. And I got really upset about that. And I remember sitting in my living room one afternoon, and I said, you know what? 30 minutes? If the Twilight Zone can do it, I can.
Yeah.
And that became my attitude.
So I think that it's certainly possible. Now, there are a lot of stories that I'm sure it was kind of difficult to pare it down to something that was shorter. But I think that you're right in that it seems like these guidelines, they got tighter. CBS really started kind of getting that interest in it. A lot of folks will say that it was due to Axanar and all that. It was
100% due to Axanar.
Yeah, definitely. I think the Paramount Plus thing might have just been a coincidence, but yeah, Axanar really kicked off the changes.
Yeah, that was the reason for the guidelines, because of the way, that person approached it.
Right.
The distance between that, which again was probably 15 or 16, and then Paramount Plus has been around for 3 years, I think. So 2020. So, 4 or 5 years.
That's about right, because it started with CBS All Access for maybe a year or so, then switched to Paramount Plus.
Correct. And Discovery came out. It's going into its 4th season. So say,
Fifth.
3-4 years ago.
It's about to start its 5th.
Yeah. Oh, it's 5th.
Yeah, it's 5th and final season.
Yeah. Okay. So I think as time went on, I don't think they really lightened up. I think people just got used to the idea of, okay, these, and they're not rules. They're really not rules. They're guidelines. So, if you can work within the guidelines, it's fine.
Okay. So question for you, and this is just for my own education, but if they're not rules and just guidelines, I'm not sure. To me, and I'm sure I'm getting this wrong. To me, guidelines is more of a, this is what it should be, but you don't have to really go by that. And the rules are, this is what it should be. That's a rule, and there are consequences for breaking it.
The guidelines, yes, you're absolutely right. Guidelines are there to keep everybody honest. Okay. Now, what do I mean by that? Right. What I mean by that is, okay, you're supposed to be 15 minutes. If it runs 20, nobody's looking the other way.
Right.
Okay. The only thing that and then you've got to put in a disclaimer that, Star Trek is the property of CBS and Paramount. And that's that's fine, right? Because it is.
Right. Okay.
There's guidelines on costumes. There's guidelines on props. Nobody really, I'm not going to say nobody follows it, because some people do, because I do. I have to.
Right. As the owner, it's probably more
the only
important.
time anyone has ever gotten spanked was if they used content from some one of the original series that was out there. They took clips from TOS, or they took clips from Voyager, right? And they used it as part of their film. And that's the no-no, if you will. There are other things, you got to watch for it. But if you read the guidelines, they're pretty easy to follow. The one and out, right? You do your series, and then you've got to, change ships, change characters, blah, blah, blah. Well, I follow that rule. But if you look at some of these fan films, there are 10, 15 films using the same characters on the same ship.
Right.
Okay. The guideline is don't. Some people say, okay, we throw in an extra character. We've got different characters. But they're been pretty easy to work with.
Okay, that doesn't sound too bad. So, excuse me. To me, it seems like, and you can tell me if I'm right here, that the guidelines now are being. Do you feel like they're being followed more because nobody wants to be that one that blows it for everybody else? I guess we could say again that we don't want a repeat of that, another crackdown, because then it could be even worse than it was before. CBS, Paramount could just decide, okay, no more fan films. It can't even look like it might be of or related to Star Trek.
Well, I think the guidelines take care of that. For instance, one of the rules in the guidelines, it's not a rule, it's guidelines.
Right.
One of the guidelines is they allow you to crowdfund. Now, crowdfunding is difficult. You do a crowdfund. If you're lucky, you can get, $3,000, $2,000, just enough to get you by, right?
Yep.
In the guidelines, it says you can crowdfund and get up to $50,000.
That's nice.
I don't know that anybody's reached that, but you know what? That gives you a lot of latitude.
That's a lot of money. And
a lot of money.
I think that for crowdfunding, that's, if you ask me, that's pretty lofty. And I think that to me, it seems like a a fair setting there for the $50,000 limit. Now, have you, and this was just recent, don't know if you're able to make it to it, but I want to ask you about your studio compared to the one in Ticonderoga, New York. Have you ever been to that one? Viewed that?
Yep, okay. I have been to Ticonderoga. I was there actually early on in its life. I was probably there in 2016, maybe late 2016. And I know James. I know him a long time. The biggest, so there's a couple of differences.
Mm-hmm.
One is he's a museum. We're a film studio.
Gotcha.
We have a bunch of sets that are recreated from, the Paramount blueprints from 1966, Desilu. He has a lot more sets.
Mm-hmm.
He has a lot more sets. He's in a much larger space. We have 10,000 square feet, and we keep bumping into each other.
Yeah.
So, so he's got more sets. I won't make a comparison because they were built differently.
Gotcha.
Even some different technology. But our studio has what you would probably consider most of the main sets, which is the bridge. We have a 2-story engine room with a warp core in it, transporter room, sick bay, briefing room, aux control, Jeffrey's tube.
You have the essentials.
You have the essentials, right? Which is fine because that's what you want to do. And, we do these walkthroughs. We do them once a month where we invite fans to come and we give them a walkthrough and talk about old Star Trek, new Star Trek, construction, filmmaking, things like that. And one other thing is we don't have all the sets. Like we have sick bay, but we don't have Dr. McCoy's office. And the reason we don't have Dr. McCoy's office is because no script ever called for one.
That's a good point.
Why build it? Why spend the money? Why use the area when someday you'll need to build something and put it in that spot, even if it's temporary? So the sets that are there are the sets that people want to use for filming.
Right. And you're right. Why have Dr. McCoy's office and the scene there when you could just do it in the sick bay right there?
Exactly.
So that's a great comparison you make as to the one that James has in Ticonderoga is more of a museum. I actually talked recently with a friend of mine who was there, sent a lot of pictures and so forth. It looks amazing. I would love someday to be able to see that one and yours because they look so authentic, which is, I think, spectacular to have. Is how much of a godsend is it for anyone wanting to do a fan film production that takes place in that time period and has your studio to be able to use for that? Now, do you find that you've been in pretty high demand? Has it been steady with fan films? From your viewpoint, where does it feel like we're at with fan films? Is it steady? Is it tapering off? Are there more that you see coming up?
Well, there are more coming up. I can tell you that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people make their fan films at studios that are convenient for them. Some people have beautiful sets in their basement.
Sure.
We have a group. I mentioned them earlier, Dreadnought Dominion.
Mm-hmm. And
one of the lead showrunners of that, and one of the producers, is a gentleman named Gary Davis. And Gary Davis built a runabout in his basement.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
Right? We have another gentleman. I'm trying to think of where he is. But I think he's in either North or South Carolina. His name is Frank Parker Jr. And he's built more of a Wrath of Khan type Starship.
He's the Ferrets.
Yes.
Yes. That I talked to him a couple weeks ago, and your name came up also.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's another one that's TOS, which is Warp 66. And I know those guys. And we're friendly competitors. But we have a bit more going for us than they have on their side. But you know what? They're convenient. It looks the same in many instances. So you can film part there and you can film part here. And when you put them together, you'd never know you were at two different locations.
Right. Well, that's the magic of filmmaking.
Magic of filmmaking.
There was another gentleman that I've talked to that I'm going to be interviewing as well. And see if maybe you recognize his name. He's been very prolific in fan films. His name is Vance Major. And he and I actually going to be talking in a few days here. And one of the things I'm going to talk to him about that I'd like to get your perspective on is, and he and I talked about this very briefly, and we're going to go more into it when we do our interview, is that there's less competition now between fan films and more cooperation than there was prior to some point. So would you say that you've seen more, less competition, less silos per se, and more of that we're all here doing the same thing, something that we like, and we're not trying to compete with each other?
So I don't think, in my world, as I see it, when I first, I'm gonna give you my perspective.
Okay.
When I first purchased the studio and I started, renting it out, if you will, for fan films, I had no idea what I was doing. I'm perfectly honest. And, I took a completely different approach, of which 5 years later, we're all almost on the same page. I think we're all on the same page. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, you're doing your film over here. If somebody's filming at Warp 66, which is similar to my sets, I'm not throwing my hands up and say, those guys are not going to film here. Doesn't peg. Doesn't mean anything. Similar if they're shooting here and they could be shooting at Warp 66. Well, like I said, sometimes part of it will be shot there. Sometimes part of it shot here. It's okay. It's okay. Star Trek shouldn't be a monopoly. Lots of people do want to make it a monopoly, but it shouldn't be a monopoly. I don't know that it ever was overly competitive, at least not from my perspective of where I've been in the last, 6 years.
Because you've been more on the business owner side of it.
Well, I produce my own films.
Yes.
So Tales from the Neutral Zone, those are our production, and I'm usually the producer.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
I tried my hand at directing, and I said, it's better for somebody else to do it. So I'm the producer. You make sure the script conforms to the way you want it to be. You do the casting. You do the costuming. We're lucky because we've collected a lot of costumes over the years. Some of them, I had done. Some of them were, other groups came in and left their costumes. Great.
They left them?
Yeah, leave them. Yeah. I mean, because they'll be back.
Oh, okay.
Right? They'll be back. So, you know what? You want to use my costumes? Fine. Can I use your costumes? Sure. Okay.
Okay.
And it gives you that it can give you a Starfleet crew look. We shot something which is out there now. Actually, is it out there? No, it's not out there yet. But, we had some young lady playing Dr. Daystrom's daughter. And I went into, the costuming area. Yeah. And I found something that Dr. Daystrom would have worn.
Yep.
And even with somebody, I went through a whole bunch of, wanted to find the right emblem, something that would, whatever, for the Daystrom Institute. And there was an emblem that was perfect for the Daystrom Institute.
So you had the emblem, but not the blue with the orange under it kind of thing.
Actually, we did blue and black.
You did blue and black.
Blue
gotcha.
That came down with the wraparound.
Yep.
And we did black underneath because it's supposed to be a little bit further in the future.
Sure.
And one of our guys created M6. So,
Wow. Just from scratch? From blueprints?
Well, he found something that had the right shape. It had the right odd lighting to it and, changing effects.
Yeah.
And so, it wasn't M5.
Okay.
It was M6, so it could look anything. It's a new design.
That's okay. Yeah, you're absolutely right. At least as long as it seems to have some design lineage to the M5, you could probably do your own thing, just about whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah. It may have originally been a toaster. I'm not sure.
A toaster. Toaster, tape it to a vacuum cleaner or something like that.
Exactly. And now you've got the Romulan cloaking
Right.
device.
So this is, and you talked about it and gave me some of the examples, but for me, I've always been curious in regards to what does a producer actually do? You see their names come up a lot when it comes to they saw a script, wanted something changed, lines, how a scene is shot. So if you could, again, for myself and for anyone in our audience that has had the same thought of, okay, what exactly is a producer? What do they do? Like what are you hands-on with as a producer?
Okay. So there's three higher roles in filmmaking. So one is the producer, one is the director, and the other one is the director of photography, which is the DP.
Okay.
So the director and the director of photography are generally not the same person. So the producer is the organizer.
Okay.
Maybe he's like the conductor, right?
Conductor, moderator.
Sure. Yeah. Right. So he's maybe like me. I'll talk about me because I'm a producer. So I'm looking at scripts. I might be writing scripts. I might have somebody who I can go to, which I do, and say, here, I have an idea, and you come up with a script for it. So the first step is finding something you're happy with that you think you could film and do justice. That's the first thing. Then you've got to think about money. You've got to think about cast. You've got to think about crew, your characters. Who are you going to cast as your characters? Who's your gaffer, which is your lighting guy? Who's your electrician? Who's your, best boy? These are all people behind the scenes. So you've got to get casting, which means you've got to project out a timeline, right? Because you can't say, I have a script, I want to go film next week.
Right.
I have a script, I'm going to go film 6 months from now.
Yeah.
And so you're assembling all of that. In addition, you've got to work with the director and generally the DP to give them your vision.
Okay.
This is my vision. I see this, right? Then you have to do call sheets. What does that mean? Well, you've got 12 characters and 20 extras. Okay. Can't have, 32 people sitting around all day.
Good point.
So you look at, you set it up like, all right, because it's not filmed in sequence. We're going to shoot all the scenes on the bridge. Then we're going to shoot all the scenes in the transporter. So, okay, on Monday, we're shooting the bridge. I need these people. I only need 10 people. I don't need the other 12 or 20.
Uh-huh.
And you start doing that to give those people ample time to do whatever they need to do. So the producer is like, I said, he's like the conductor. And the producer's job is to make sure that all of the participants in the orchestra play well together.
Right.
That's what it is.
Okay.
And producers not always on set. I am, because I'm that hands-on guy.
Yep.
Some people like it. Some people hate me, but it's okay.
You're the Jerry Jones of the Dallas Cowboys?
I am the Steven Spielberg of the movie industry.
Yes. You're all the way up here, but you like being down there on the ground.
But again, between the producer, the director, and the DP, the director of photography, you're collaborating on what that shot should look like. The shot looks great. We got the bio beds. We got our characters. We've got a security guard. We got to do something about the lighting.
Mm-hmm.
We got to change the lighting. And you work together on that. The director works with the people, tries to get the emotion, the inflection that the story calls for. Because anybody could say, there's a Romulan ship off the port bow. But you got to have that person say, there's a Romulan ship off the port bow. Now, I'm not an actor.
The first thing you did, the first example, is very much what we saw of George Lucas in the prequel trilogy. It was just kind of sat there and it's like, look at that green screen, then look at that green screen, and imagine you're on this big giant city planet and look there and pretend like you're talking to somebody. You're right. There's a very big difference in the directing, and what the director is supposed to do is, like you said, directing your performance. This is an emotional scene, a scary scene, suspenseful.
Exactly. One of the first things, I say two things to people, because we do a table read.
Okay.
And generally with the table read, I invite everybody, extras, the crew, the lighting people, whomever, sound, right? All of that. And I say two things to these people. Number one, no matter how good a job you do in acting, nobody here is going to win an Academy Award.
No Academy Awards here.
No Academy Award. And number two, you have to feel the part. I know it's a fan film. I know you people are not actors. They're not professional actors. Some people are actors, but they're not, quote unquote, professional actors.
Right.
And I say, if the scene says the ship is attacked by the Klingons and gets pounded by torpedoes, well, then sit there, look nervous, take a dump, act like you got hit by a torpedo.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's how you have to do it. And you have to really work with people, because people will think they're doing a good job. And it's not that they're not doing a bad job. Not that. But they're not doing the job the way the story was written.
Kind of like sitting calmly during a attack with the Klingons when you're getting shot at.
Right. Just having, a conversation. What do we do now, Captain? and then they'll go to the VFX and the ship is getting pounded and you can see it shaking. Well, maybe we should do this.
What you need more of is, what are we going to do now, huh? Yeah. What are we going to do?
Exactly.
So now real quick, what's the difference with executive producer? I tend to see that more as it feels like an honorary title. There are some movies and TV shows where in the opening credits, it seems like, okay, well, is everyone an executive producer? And if everybody's an executive producer, then nobody is, kind of thing. So what's that difference?
So I usually put myself in as executive producer in my fan films because I think too much of myself.
Right. That's okay.
The executive producer is really, again, the conductor.
Yep.
But he's not hands-on. He's the guy like who's the guy who did Law and Order, right? And now it's been rebooted.
Bracco,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, whoever it is, right?
Yeah.
He's executive producer. But there's producers that could be different episode to episode. So he might be saying, I want you to be the producer of this episode. And then the producer has that role of casting and all of that. The director, the DP, the lighting, the effects, all of that. I don't really go too much by titles. I just think that, especially in fan films, you give yourself a title. It doesn't always mean anything. I'm not trying to play that down at all. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But you know what? Executive producer looks better than producer.
Yeah. So you make yourself King Ray, ultimate producer of ultimate producer of Star Trek, Federation or Continues or Farragut, whatever it is.
Exactly.
So, and I think
it's Ray Tesi, ultimate producer.
Yeah. Now, if you start using ultimate producer as a position, you got to give a little bit of credit, just a tiny bit in the corner. BigJ, Beyond Trek podcast, says I should be the ultimate producer. So to the executive producer to producers, to me, it sounds like the admiral to captains.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. That's a great analogy.
Okay. Gotcha. So this raises an interesting point, and I've always wanted to know this. You hear these stories all the time that there's a certain scene that took days to shoot, or I'm not sure how much you follow. For example, Mission Impossible, one of the Mission Impossible movies. I don't remember which one. I want to say 7, but I could be wrong. There was this big fight in a bathroom with the Tom Cruise character, Henry Cavill's character, and another gentleman, don't remember his name. And they were talking about the behind the scenes here that they shot that scene, took 4 weeks to do, and just talking about how grueling physically it was and how long they had to go through that. So my question is, when you hear things like this scene took 2 days to film, or this scene took a week, what is that? What does that mean? Why is it that if I've got a scene on the bridge for however long it's supposed to be, I'm not able to accomplish that in a day? It can go longer.
Well, there's a couple of factors. So one is, how long is the scene? Okay. Here's something that I learned when I did my first film, Starship Republic. So I had never done a film at all. I'd never done a film. And I had a gentleman, Gabriel Moore, who came on as the DP. Okay. He taught me more about filmmaking than anybody has ever done since. The one thing I didn't realize was, okay, let's set up the scene and everybody get ready, and, camera's ready, audio's ready, action. And you film the scene. It's okay. You reset second time, third time, maybe fourth time. In fan films, the fourth time better be the most you do.
Yes.
Because you're on a clock.
Yeah, this isn't a Hollywood production, folks. We need to get this in 4 takes.
Exactly. However, okay, we finished the scene. And, all right, we need to do close-ups. All right, let's reset the camera. Let's reset the scene. Let's make sure the whole lighting is right. Let's make sure, the spot that he's going to stand on is where it should be. Or in our case, okay, we need to shoot the opening of the scene, which is a camera angle down where the doors open and you just see 2 men in boots, just their boots walking in. And you do that for every character from different angles over and over and over again. And it amazed me. I had no idea. I mean, I watched movies all my life. I watched TV shows all my life.
Yeah.
And I never realized that. And so, yeah, one scene can take, depending on the number of actors you have and the angles and what the scene calls for, you're moving that camera around and you're resetting, you know? And maybe you have something over here on set, but when you put your camera over here, that's now in the way.
Yes.
Is anybody going to notice that you moved it from here to here? No, nobody notices that. Nobody sees that, but you have to be conscious of it.
Yes. Wow. That's quite the lesson I learned there. I did not know those things. And that totally makes sense, is that you spend as much time as you need with the camera on one angle.
Yep.
Then you go back and do it all over again with the close-up for this one, then the close-up on this one, and then these three. Wow.
Right. Something I learned from Vic, because Vic was the executive producer and whatever for Star Trek Continues. The first scene you shoot is called the master shot. And the master shot is where you have all of your characters in place, all of your actors in place. Everybody knows their script. That's very important, is that the actors know their lines.
Yep.
And you have the camera in a spot somewhat far away where you can see the entire set. And you film the entire scene in a master shot. Now, why do you film the master shot? Okay, all right, let's get the close-ups. Now we want this angle. Now we got to get the comm officer. Now we got to get the helmsman. Let's go to the captain, blah, blah, blah. Let's go to the turbo lift and the doors open and the doctor, blah, 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 blah. You do all of it for hours upon hours, maybe even more than a day. Then you get to post-production. You're editing. And you're now sitting there with all of these different scenes, right? And you're assembling these scenes. And all of a sudden you say, we didn't shoot the close-up of the comm officer turning around giving this order. You go back and reshoot it, and no time, no money. It's in your master shot.
Ah,
so you pull that clip out of your master shot. Okay, so it's not the close-up you envisioned, but it's the scene.
So the master shot is the save your ass scene.
Save your ass. Yes. I like that. I might use that in my next walk.
There you go. So you're going to be the ultimate producer, and now you've got the save your ass shot. Someone's going to say, "Hey, Ray, this is great. Where'd you get all these
I'm
new
giving
things?"
you credit.
Oh, that's great. I love it. So that's great. That's great education on what you do. Now, as the producer, are you editing also, or do you have another person as the editor? Or is it like one of those, the budget doesn't call for the producer to have an editor, he has to do both?
Well, it depends. For example, Avalon Universe, who's Joshua Irwin, okay? Mm-hmm. He has been, he basically is the producer. He's not always the director, but he's generally sitting somewhere behind the camera. So it's his production. He's an editor as well. I'm an editor, like I'm the ultimate producer.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Yep.
I can do it. And I actually have done some that I've even impressed myself.
Oh, okay.
But generally, I'd rather hand it off to somebody to do it. Because they're more skilled, or they have better equipment, or they have better software.
They know all the shortcuts.
Yeah, they have more, they're educationally better at putting in effects.
Yes.
And one thing that people don't realize is, one of the things we tell the actors is if you're sitting at a console, don't constantly push buttons. Don't push buttons. Why don't you push a button? Because every time you push a button, you got to put in a sound.
Oh.
That drives the editor crazy.
Oh.
Because now you got to be looking at everybody's hands.
Yeah.
Right?
There's another day of filming.
There's another day of filming. That's a long edit. That's a long edit. And then finding the right music.
Yeah.
And finding the right guy for video effects, ship scenes and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see the editor chucking something on set. We told you not to push the buttons. Don't press any buttons. Just sit there.
Yeah. We had a guy walk out of the turbo in an episode. I'm very happy with pretty much all the films that we've made because it really became my vision, right? If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And we had a scene. We did an episode called Doomsday, which was the prequel to the Doomsday Machine. How did Matt Decker become the last man on ship? Right? Mm-hmm. And the opening scene, Decker, the actor who played Decker in our fan film, walks out and he's walking like he's got a clubbed foot. I said, "What's your problem?" He said, "Well, his boots are too tight." I said, "Well, take the boots off. And we'll just film you from your knees up. Who's going to know?"
Right.
So these are the behind the scenes things that you've got to look for and be able to just quickly react and make sure the scene is the way you want it.
The shoes hurt? Take them off.
Take them off.
The shoe close-up is not scheduled today, so don't worry about it.
Exactly. I think there's a story about the 2009 Star Trek, the Chris Pine. Mm-hmm. And there's a scene with a bunch of crewmen running in the hallway.
Yeah. And
everybody's clacking.
Yeah.
Because they're wearing boots. And the director said, "Everybody take off your boots." And everybody's running around in socks.
Oh, they are. Oh.
Yeah. You never know it.
I didn't.
They're all running around in socks.
That is amazing. They had to be those hospital grippers because in that scene, there's a couple sharp turns that people are making. And you know, they eat it on the floor, just wipe it out in socks.
Yeah, it could very well be. But the point is they had to take their boots off.
Yep. That is some amazing stuff. I really liked all the things that we talked about there. And I want to tell you that I appreciate your time. It was great to be able to talk with you more about this stuff. So as we start wrapping up here, are there any upcoming projects, anything that you want to promote, talk about, social media, any of that stuff? Lay it on us so that way anything you've got going on, we can put more eyes and ears on it.
Well, I appreciate that. So I invite everybody to go to our website, which is just neutralzonestudios.com. Neutralzonestudios.com. Correct. We are starting up our fan weekends again. So September 23rd and 24th. And it's real simple. Go to the website, find the calendar. There's a link that takes you right to the calendar. You pick a day, you pick a time, you sign up. That's it. We also have several productions coming up. Dreadnought Dominion, which I talked about, is coming up shortly. There's another group that has filmed. They're filming they do videos, training videos for their company on the ship. And they're filming their finale. I think it's their 4th or 5th episode.
Nice. Okay.
And then in January, I'm working with Josh Irwin from Avalon. He finished his Avalon series. And we are going to take a week and we are going to try to film 3 different shorts in that week, 3 15-minute episodes in that week. And we have other people booked, but a lot of people come to us and they don't have a finalized script in their mind. And so it becomes difficult to do schedule, but that's all coming up. So really, we do want to get people to the studio. It will make you feel like a kid again. The one thing I'd really like to emphasize is donations. We are a not-for-profit. We do not make money. The money we make goes towards rent and utility. It goes towards repair, all kinds of different things. But it's all, fan films are free. Part of the guidelines is you can't make money.
Right.
And
right.
that's a fair guideline. So all our films are generally on YouTube. Some are on Vimeo. They're all free to watch. There are thousands of fan films out there. Please go to Tales from the Neutral Zone. But we do have a Patreon page, and that's off the website as well. And Patreon, if people are not familiar with it, it's a pledge. It's a monthly pledge to make a donation to the studio. And it doesn't matter how much. I know times are tough. Trust me, I get it. But, the cost of a cup of coffee, $5 a month. Will you miss it? No. If you're a big spender and you'd like to really help us out, that's great. There are different perks, things like that. But it's Patreon, and you'll find it on the website. It's a help us or support us link. So anyone who can, because as a lot of times we say when people walk through, can you imagine if this place wasn't?
If you can imagine if the place wasn't there.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we want to keep it alive. It's for the love of Star Trek, but it's for the fans. It's certainly not for me. I want to be able to give these experiences. And, when somebody comes on the set and they hug you or they cry, it gets very humbling.
Yeah.
That's the reason I'm doing it, I guess. That's the reason I'm doing it. So, it's an interesting experience. And it's one that every Star Trek fan is welcome to come and enjoy.
It must be pretty fulfilling to have that effect on someone that comes to participate in your productions and your set. Because you're right, you're doing it for the love of Star Trek. It's not for getting rich or making a lot of money and things like that. You do it because you like it. And
exactly.
You've got to really like it to have it be a professional endeavor, like with what you're doing. Now, this was very interesting. And I think this would be a good education moment for me again. So you're a 501c.
No, studio is not.
Studio is not 501c.
Studio is not. It's a not-for-profit. Okay, we have another division, which really hasn't taken off, called TNZ Education and Film Foundation.
Okay.
That is a 501c3, but nothing's ever happened with that.
Okay. So
we are a not-for-profit, so we work on donations.
Not-for-profit. Gotcha. Okay, so there's not-for-profit and non-profit.
Non-profit.
They're two different. That's where all right. I just thought people were using two different ways to say the same thing. Okay, so you're not-for-profit, but I would imagine that anyone who wants to come in and film on your location, they can't just walk in and do it, because you're right. You got bills to pay. So how do you, and if this is like confidential financial info, but how do you navigate around that? How are you not for profit, but you got to keep the lights on? I wouldn't imagine that these productions are coming in off the street. Hey, here, free filming, just bring your own equipment.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right, because we have to keep the lights on. Every film production is a bit different. So there are some, call it a base rental fee. And do you need us to do anything for you? Extras, we have people who are just dying to be extras. So don't worry about that. But Do you need a cameraman? Do you need sound equipment? Do you need the camera?
Yeah.
You know, what do you need? Do you need us to find you a director or a director of photography? What do you need? And all those things have to come into it. Now, the easiest way is you get somebody who's even novices, you have to educate them. But guys who have done it a while come with their own equipment. They know what to expect. They have done their crowdfunding. They know what it is, because what people don't realize is, all right, you come and you film for 3 days. There's travel, there's gas, there's hotel, there's food.
Mm-hmm.
You get in the middle of your day and somebody's doing this for the first time and people are going, hey, I'm hungry. Oh, yeah, food.
We got to eat, too.
Got to eat. So you could actually go to the website, neutralzonestudios.com. There's a tab that says make your own fan film. And it gives you some base costs, but an idea of what you need to know. You know, first get your script, but don't think you're going to say, I have a script, I want to come film it next week.
Right.
You know, you have to see the script. You have to look at it. You have to make sure it's family friendly.
Yes. You're not coming here to film Star Trek XXX.
Right. Yeah. Charlie Triple X. Yeah, exactly. Right. So people don't understand the timeline. People don't understand that there is a time. And they must be conscious, and they have to sometimes be educated. But we call it our guidelines, which refers back to Paramount's guidelines. So there's a whole section on our website on how to make your own fan film. Now, since we're talking about that, I'm going to throw this out there.
Okay.
So I believe that Star Trek is for everyone.
Absolutely.
And I offer the opportunity for people to be an extra or work behind the camera to learn what filmmaking is all about. And I just open that up. There's no charges for that. You want to learn how to make a film? Come on in. We have a film out there, because one of the things I like to do with crossovers, I like to do things that are a little different.
Yeah.
So we have something out there called an episode called When Duty Calls. And it's a crossover between TOS and Discovery.
Interesting.
Now, who's done that, right?
Yeah, really.
TOS and Discovery. Well, maybe you'll see it now in Strange Worlds, but, whatever. But still. And how did that come about? Well, we were doing a fan weekend. And these two women came dressed in Discovery outfits. And one was the perfect Burnham, and one was the perfect Tilly. And I walked up to them when they walked in the door, and I said, I'm putting you in a fan film. And they were like, yeah, okay, sure. And within 3 or 4 weeks, I had a script that I wrote. And I did the casting for the other characters. And about 3 months later, we filmed it. And just people who walked in off the street.
Wow. That is amazing. And it can be that easy. Did you ever hear the story about Patrick Stewart getting cast to play, getting called in to do a audition? There was a man involved with the production of Next Generation. I don't recall who it was, but basically this gentleman was walking down a hallway at this university. Patrick Stewart was teaching a class. The guy walks by the classroom, hears him talking, turns back around and says, this man needs to come in and audition for Captain Picard. He's walking down the hallway for who knows what. I don't think the story even really said. He could be doing whatever. And exactly. You just happen to walk by and you hear a voice, boom, there you go. And now, many years later, Patrick Stewart is Sir Patrick Stewart and a household name.
Exactly. Do you know the story of Patrick Stewart had no confidence when he was doing the first season of Next Gen that he never unpacked the suitcase.
Didn't unpack the bags. Yeah.
Yep.
It's legendary story.
But you know what? You have lots of kids that come in. I don't mean, you get kids, but I'm talking about, teenagers, young adults who didn't necessarily come in to see Star Trek, but came in to see a set, or a soundstage. And, they'll come up to me and say, is there anything I can do? Is there? Yeah, sure. Put your name, get on the volunteer list. Because what I do is if I know there's a production coming up, I send an announcement out to everybody. Because the first response has to be, I can make those dates. Because if you can't make the date, what good does it do?
Right.
So I send something out to everybody, and then, okay, here's all the people that can make those dates. Okay, what do you do? Okay, I do nothing. Okay, do you want to come and be a fly on the wall and see how it's done? I'd love to.
Uh-huh. Okay. So it can be that easy. Just come and watch.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I love it. Hopefully one of these days I'll be able to wrench myself free from Cincinnati, Ohio. Not always easy to go on vacation, and especially something for fun, but I've been wanting to get out and see these Star Trek sets, like the one in New York and yours, because it just being there would feel amazing. So hopefully that will be in the cards at some point. And,
if you can plan that,
mm-hmm.
and you can give me advance notice, because I've been looking at you, and I will.
That might be a bad thing.
I will cast you in a role. We're going to have a transporter accident that beams Cisco from DS9 to a TOS.
Okay.
We'll make you Cisco.
Wow. That was, as soon as you said Cisco, I'm thinking, yeah, because he's my spirit animal.
Is he?
Pretty much, yeah, because that's kind of the shaving the head is not by choice, it's by necessity, because the hair just doesn't come in like it used to. And my kids have said that, Daddy, you have to have facial hair. I said, why? Why do I have to? Well, because you have no hair in your head. I said, okay, well, I have no hair in my head. Why do I have to have it on my face? And my daughter said, well, because you look like a thumb. And
he's like a thumb?
Without any hair, no facial hair, no head hair. Yeah. Oh, and I was upset. I looked like a thumb. It was horrible. But, it's just, and I've been told that on more than one occasion, is that when the times or rare times where I have gone clean shaven, it was suggested to me by the makeup artist, don't do that. Keep the goatee there. But when we're done recording here, I definitely want to get the information on that, because if at all possible, I would love to play Cisco in a fan film. That would be great. So anyone listening or watching to this, keep your fingers crossed of BigJ being in a fan film playing Cisco, no less, which would be spectacular. And for all of you that spent the time with us listening and watching, thank you very much. Thank Ray for taking the time and talking with us. Excellent talk. And for all of you out there, just remember, live long and prosper. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can support us at patreon.com/BeyondTrek.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your ears. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.